The massive window of the observation deck revealed a sight that made Captain Mark Roberts catch his breath. The Galactic Union Assembly Station hung against the backdrop of stars like a giant silver flower, its petal-shaped docking bays extending outward from a spherical center. Each petal contained ships from different worlds, different species, and now, for the first time, a human vessel. "Quite a view," said Anna Frost, standing beside him. As Earth's lead diplomat, she looked calm, but Mark noticed her fingers nervously tapping against her leg. 32 species in the Union, Mark said, and all of them looking at us like we're wild animals. Anna smiled tightly. "Then let's show them how well-behaved we can be." Their ship, the UES Hope, docked with a soft thud. Mark straightened his uniform one last time. Earth had spent years preparing for this moment, ever since humans had discovered the faster-than-light drive and detected signals from the Union. Everything about their mission had been carefully planned. What hadn't been planned was the way the Union species would react to humans. The door slid open, revealing 3 aliens waiting to greet them. In the center stood a tall, slender being with pale blue skin and large eyes that blinked slowly. 2 shorter aliens flanked it, one covered in delicate scales, the other with 4 arms and greenish skin. "Welcome to the assembly," the blue alien said in perfect English. "I am First Speaker Lun. We have studied your language to better communicate." Anna stepped forward. "We are honored. First Speaker. I am Diplomat Anna Frost, and this is Captain Mark Roberts." The alien's eyes narrowed slightly. "Captain, a military rank." Mark felt the temperature in the room drop. "Yes," he answered carefully. "I command our vessel." The 3 aliens exchanged glances. "Interesting," Lund said. "Please follow us to the welcome chamber." As they walked through the station's gleaming corridors, Mark noticed other aliens moving aside, watching them with what looked like fascination and fear. Some even changed direction when they saw the humans coming. In the welcome chamber, representatives of all Union species gathered in a large semicircle. Anna presented Earth's formal request to join the Union, and Lund translated for the assembly. Murmurs filled the room. "Your species has a concerning history," Lund finally said. "Our researchers have studied your public broadcasts. You have had thousands of wars. You make entertainment about killing. Your nations still maintain military forces." Anna nodded carefully. "We have a complex past, but we've evolved. Earth has been at peace for 50 years now." A small bird-like alien chirped something, and Lund translated. "Elderfell asks if humans still train for combat." "We maintain defensive capabilities," Mark answered, "for protection only." This caused more murmuring. Lund's expression was hard to read, but seemed troubled. "The Union has existed for 12,000 years without military forces," Lund explained. "Violence was left behind as our species evolved. We solve all conflicts through dialogue and compromise." Mark wanted to ask how they defended themselves against outside threats, but held his tongue. This wasn't the time. "Earth will be granted conditional membership," Lund announced after conferring with the others. "You must demonstrate commitment to peaceful ways. Your ships must be stripped of weapons. Your military organizations must be converted to scientific and exploration divisions." Anna bowed slightly. "We appreciate the Union's acceptance. Earth will consider these terms carefully." As the ceremony continued, a soft alert sounded. One of the 4-armed aliens approached Lund, speaking quickly in their language. Lund's face showed subtle signs of distress. "Is something wrong?" Mark asked. "An unregistered vessel has appeared at the edge of our system," Lund said dismissively. "It happens occasionally. Our communication team will establish dialogue and resolve any misunderstanding." Mark noticed the fear in several aliens' eyes, despite Lund's casual tone. He glanced at Anna, who gave a small nod. Something wasn't right. "Perhaps we could offer assistance," Mark suggested. Lund's expression shifted to something like offense. "There is no need for assistance. The Union has resolved all such encounters peacefully for thousands of years. Mark nodded politely, but a chill ran down his spine. As the aliens turned away to discuss among themselves, he whispered to Anna, "They don't have weapons. Any of them." Anna's eyes widened slightly. "And they've never needed them. Or they've never survived to tell about it when they did," Mark replied softly, watching the unfamiliar ship growing larger on the external displays. 3 days after the humans arrived at the assembly station, the mysterious ship had not left. Instead, it had been joined by 2 others of similar design, long, dark vessels with spines protruding from their hulls like the quills of some ancient Earth porcupine. Tom Green sat in the back of the Union assembly chamber, watching with growing frustration as yet another committee meeting dragged on. As a former military strategist, Earth had sent him to advise the diplomatic team. But so far, his expertise had been politely ignored. The visitors have not responded to 17 communication attempts, reported a small furred alien named Drill. But we must be patient. Different species have different communication protocols. Tom leaned forward to whisper to Anna, 3 ships now, all in attack formation, and they haven't even considered it might be hostile. Anna gave him a warning look. The Union doesn't think that way. The Union is naive, Tom muttered, but fell silent as Lund approached them. Your colleague seems troubled, Lund said to Anna, glancing at Tom. Does he wish to address the assembly? Before Anna could stop him, Tom stood. Yes, actually. I have concerns about these unidentified vessels. The chamber grew quiet as all attention turned to him. Tom cleared his throat. The positioning of these ships follows what humans would recognize as a standard attack formation. They've ignored all communication. Where I come from, these are warning signs. A ripple of what sounded like shocked whispers spread through the assembly. And what would humans do in such a situation? Asked an elder with translucent skin. Prepare defenses, Tom said simply. Ready weapon systems. The whispers turned to sounds of clear disapproval. Lund stepped forward. We appreciate your input, human Tom, but the Union does not maintain weapons. We have found that preparation for violence often invites violence. As Tom opened his mouth to argue, an urgent tone filled the chamber. A Union communications officer rushed in, their scales flashing with colors that Tom had learned indicated extreme distress. First speaker, the officer said, we have lost contact with Outpost Vega. All 50,000 inhabitants. The room fell silent. Lund blinked slowly. Perhaps a communications malfunction. We have also lost contact with Colony Taurus, the officer continued, voice shaking. And a transport ship reports unknown vessels near both locations before communications ended. Tom exchanged glances with Anna and Captain Roberts, who had just entered the chamber. For the first time, real fear showed on the faces of the Union representatives. We must form another committee, suggested one of the elders, to understand their motivations and establish peaceful dialogue. Tom couldn't contain himself any longer. While you form committees, people are dying, he shouted, causing several aliens to flinch at his volume. Those ships are attacking your outposts. Human Tom, Lund said firmly, your aggressive thinking is not helpful. The Union has survived for thousands of years through peaceful resolution of conflicts. Have you ever faced anyone who didn't want peace? Tom challenged. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Later that night, Tom found himself pacing the humans' quarters, while Mark and Anna watched him with concern. They're going to get everyone killed, Tom said. They have no concept of defense. No weapons. Nothing. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal a young Union member, one Tom recognized from the communications team. The alien glanced nervously down the corridor before entering. I shouldn't be here, the alien whispered. But you need to know. We just received this from Outpost Helios before we lost contact. The alien handed Tom a small device. When activated, it projected a holographic image that made all 3 humans recoil. The recording showed creatures boarding the Union ship. Tall, skeletal beings with multiple limbs moving with terrible purpose. They dragged screaming Union members away, not killing them but carefully collecting them. "What are they doing to them?" Anna whispered. The final transmission called them harvesters. The alien said, voice trembling. They consume neural tissue from sentient beings. They've been operating at the edges of our space for years, but the assembly refused to acknowledge the threat. They said acknowledging violence would bring violence into our peaceful union. Mark's face hardened. "How many outposts have fallen?" 7 now, the alien replied. "Millions of lives. The assembly is still debating how to establish peaceful contact." Tom looked at Mark and Anna, his expression grim. "We need to contact Earth. Now, before it's too late." The alien's eyes widened with something that looked like hope. You can fight them." "Fighting is what humans do best," Tom said quietly, "even when we wish we didn't have to." Mark Roberts stood in his quarters, facing a holographic display of Earth's President Davis. The secure transmission had taken 12 hours to arrange without the Union's knowledge. Against direct orders from the Assembly, he had contacted home. "You're certain about this threat?" the President asked, her face grave. "Completely certain, Madam President. The harvesters have destroyed 7 outposts already. Millions dead. And the Union's response is to form more committees." Mark's voice was tight with frustration. "They have no weapons, no defenses, not even a basic security force. They've forgotten how to fight." The President was quiet for a moment. "And you believe Earth is also in danger? If these harvesters move through Union space unchallenged, they'll eventually reach our solar system. We need to act now, not just for ourselves, but for all these species who can't defend themselves." The President nodded slowly. "Captain, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. When the Union required us to decommission our fleet as a condition of membership, we didn't exactly comply. The ships were officially decommissioned, but—" Mark's eyes widened. "They're still operational. Hidden in the asteroid belt. Minimal crews, powered down to avoid detection. We couldn't bring ourselves to disarm completely, not after our history." She looked directly at him. "I'm activating the Earth Defense Fleet under Admiral Lisa Blackwood. She'll rendezvous with you near the Theta system in 3 days." Relief washed over Mark. "Thank you, Madam President." "Captain," the President added, "this will likely end our relationship with the Union. We'll be violating their most sacred principles." "With respect, Madam President, there won't be a Union left to reject us if we don't act." 3 days later, in a small meeting room away from the Union Assembly's main chambers, Mark, Anna, and Tom met with a growing group of concerned Union members. The young communications officer, who had revealed his name as Kell, had brought others who questioned the Assembly's inaction. "The harvesters have taken 3 more colonies," Kell reported. "The outer systems are in panic. Still, the Assembly refuses to call it an invasion." A soft chime from Mark's communicator interrupted the discussion. He checked it, then gave Anna and Tom a significant look. "It's time. Our friends have arrived." The aliens looked confused, but followed as the humans led them to an observation deck facing away from the Union Station's main approach. Through the vast window, they could see a small fleet of ships emerging from jump points. "What are those?" Kell asked, his voice hushed. "That," Tom said with pride, "is the Earth Defense Fleet." 20 sleek vessels, clearly designed for combat, moved into formation. At their center was the EDF Nemesis, Admiral Blackwood's flagship. "But the Union forbids weapons," one of the aliens stammered. "You agreed to disarm." Anna placed a gentle hand on the alien's shoulder. "We agreed to consider the terms. We never actually disarmed." Mark's communicator buzzed again. "Admiral Blackwood is requesting permission to board the Union station to discuss strategy." The aliens exchanged nervous glances. "The Assembly will never approve," Kell said. "Then we don't ask the Assembly," Tom replied firmly. "We act." Within hours, Admiral Lisa Blackwood strode through the docking bay. flanked by her officers. She was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen more battles than anyone in the room could imagine. The aliens shrank back instinctively at her presence. Something about her radiated power and danger. "Captain Roberts," she nodded. "Situation report." Mark quickly introduced the Union members who had joined them and summarized the Harvester threat. Blackwood listened intently, her expression hardening. "Our first priority is evacuation," she announced when he finished. "We'll move ships to the systems in the Harvester's path and get as many people out as we can. The Assembly will never authorize." One alien began. "I'm not asking for authorization," Blackwood cut in sharply. "I'm telling you what's going to happen. You can help us coordinate, or you can stay here and debate while your people die. Your choice." The alien fell silent. "What about fighting the Harvesters?" Tom asked. Blackwood's lips curved into a smile that made the alien shift uncomfortably. "Oh, we'll fight them too. The fleet has already engaged a Harvester ship near the Deneb outpost. We won." She accessed a tactical display. "They weren't expecting resistance. They have no tactical training, no combat experience. They've only hunted prey that can't fight back." "Until now," Mark added. Kell stepped forward, nervous but determined. "What can we do to help?" Admiral Blackwood regarded the small alien with newfound respect. "We need coordinates for all vulnerable outposts, population numbers, and any tactical data you can provide about Harvester movements." "That information is restricted by the Assembly," Kell said, then straightened his shoulders. "But I know how to access it." "Good," Blackwood nodded. "Welcome to the Resistance." The massive space station known as Sanctuary wasn't supposed to exist. Built in secret over the past month from the shells of civilian transport ships and retrofitted mining vessels, it hung in the darkness of the Cygnus Void, a region of space largely ignored by both the Union and the Harvesters. Admiral Blackwood stood on the makeshift command deck, surveying the sensor readings. Around her, a mix of human officers and Union volunteers worked at stations never designed for military use. "Status report," she ordered. "Refugee count at 27,000 and rising," reported Lieutenant Davis. "We've got ships coming in from the Procyon and Sirius sectors, most of them packed beyond safe capacity." Blackwood nodded grimly. Over the past weeks, the Earth Defense Fleet had evacuated 11 Union colonies directly in the Harvester's path. The Union Assembly had officially condemned the human intervention as aggressive interference, but thousands of Union citizens had chosen evacuation over the Assembly's ineffective peace negotiations. "Admiral," called out Tom Green, who had become an essential part of Blackwood's tactical team. "Long-range sensors are picking up unusual activity in the Ta sector. The pattern matches Harvester scout ships." Blackwood's expression tightened. "They're searching for us." Someone talked. "It was bound to happen," Tom said. "We've moved too many people." "Prepare defense protocols," Blackwood ordered. "And get me Captain Roberts on the comm." Minutes later, Mark's face appeared on screen. His ship, the Hope, had been converted into a fast response vessel, now patrolling the edges of their hidden sanctuary. "The Harvesters are probing the Ta sector," Blackwood told him without preamble. "We need to prepare for the possibility they'll find us." Mark nodded. "We've been reinforcing the outer defense ring, but we're working with mining lasers and retrofitted cargo haulers. If they bring a serious force—" "I know," Blackwood cut in. "But we've hurt them in the last few engagements. They're learning that humans aren't easy prey." A commotion behind Blackwood drew her attention. Anna Frost was escorting an elderly Union alien onto the command deck. The alien's skin was almost translucent with age, eyes large and wise. "Admiral," Anna said, "this is Elder Thel from the Assembly. He wishes to speak with you." Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "Have you come to deliver another condemnation from the Assembly, Elder?" Thel's voice was soft but steady. "I come alone, without the Assembly's knowledge. I wish to understand what you are doing here." "Saving lives," Blackwood replied bluntly. "While your Assembly talks, we act." Fell moved closer to the tactical display, studying the patterns of ships. You expect the harvesters to attack this station. It's inevitable. We've been too successful at evacuation. They're losing their food source. The elder flinched at the word food, but continued examining the display. And these formations of your ships, this is how you will defend. With whatever we have, Blackwood confirmed. Fell was silent for a long moment. In all my 300 years, I have never witnessed beings prepare for violence as a positive act. The Union teaches that violence breeds only violence. Sometimes violence is necessary to protect the innocent, Tom said. That's what humans understand that the Union doesn't. Before Thel could respond, alarm tones sounded throughout the command deck. Multiple jump signatures detected, called out a sensor officer. Harvester configuration. At least 12 ships, including what appears to be a command vessel. Battle stations, Blackwood ordered calmly. All civilian ships to the center of the formation. Defense vessels moved to intercept. As the command deck erupted into organized chaos, Fell watched in amazement. The humans showed no panic, only focused determination. Each knew their role, moving with practiced precision. You've prepared for this, Fell observed. We've been preparing for war for thousands of years, Blackwood said grimly. It's in our blood. The next hours were a blur of tactical commands, flashing screens, and the distant rumble of impacts against Sanctuary's hastily assembled shields. Human ships darted between the much larger harvester vessels, using speed and maneuverability to make up for their lack of firepower. From the command deck view screen, Fell watched a small human fighter deliberately crash into a harvester vessel's drive section, causing a cascade of explosions that disabled the much larger ship. The pilot, Fell began, made a choice, Blackwood finished, her voice tight, to save hundreds by sacrificing himself. As the battle raged, Fell observed the humans' faces. They showed determination, fear, grief when comrades were lost, and fierce joy when tactics succeeded. When a harvester mothership exploded after a daring attack run by Captain Roberts' squadron, the humans cheered and embraced each other, their faces alight with something the Union elder had never seen before. Your people seem to take pleasure in the destruction, Thel said softly, not accusingly but with genuine confusion. Blackwood looked at him directly. Not in the destruction, elder. In survival. In protection. In knowing that every harvester ship we destroy means thousands of your people won't be harvested. For the first time in his long life, Fell began to understand that what had always looked like bloodthirst to his people might be something else entirely. The Union Assembly Hall had never been so divided. 2 weeks after the Battle of Sanctuary, representatives from all member species filled the massive chamber, their voices raised in heated debate. At the center stood Elder Fell, no longer just one voice among many, but the leader of what some were calling the pragmatist faction. The humans have saved over 40,000 Union citizens, Fell announced, his frail voice somehow carrying across the chamber. While we debated, they acted. While we sought understanding, they provided protection. First Speaker Lund rose from his seat, his usual calm demeanor strained. Elder Fell, with respect, the humans have violated our most sacred principles. They have brought violence into Union space. The harvesters brought violence. Fell countered. The humans brought defense. Watching from a side gallery with Anna and Tom, Mark felt a strange mix of pride and unease. The victory at Sanctuary had forced many Union species to reconsider their absolute pacifism, but the cost had been high. 17 human ships destroyed, over 200 crew members lost. They still don't really understand, Tom whispered. They think of our defense as just another form of aggression. Anna nodded. 12,000 years of peaceful development. They've lost the concept of justified violence. On the assembly floor, another elder rose. The humans' actions cannot be condoned. Their ships must leave Union space immediately. Voices of agreement rose from what the humans had come to call the traditionalist faction. But to Mark's surprise, nearly as many voices opposed the motion. And what of the harvesters? Demanded a representative whose homeworld had been among the first attacked. Who will protect us when the humans leave? The debate raged on, neither side willing to yield. Finally, First Speaker Lund called for a brief recess. As the assembly members dispersed, Kell approached the humans. Elderfeld requests your presence, he said quietly. We may have found something important. They followed Kell through the station's corridors to a small research lab, where Elderfeld waited with a group of Union scientists. Among them stood Jack Wilson, a human weapons engineer who had joined the defense fleet. Captain Roberts, Jack nodded as they entered. We've been analyzing the harvester ship components recovered after the battle. Feld gestured to a display showing complex schematics. Jack has made a discovery that may change everything. Jack stepped forward. The harvesters don't use traditional navigation systems. They use neural networks, actual brain tissue harvested from their victims, integrated into their ships. That's why they take people alive. Anna whispered, horrified. Yes, Jack confirmed. But it's also a weakness. These neural networks operate on specific frequencies that can be disrupted. We could develop a weapon that essentially blinds their entire fleet. Mark studied the schematics. How close would we need to get to deploy this? Jack's expression grew serious. That's the problem. It would need to be deployed directly at their command ship. We'd have to get right into the heart of their fleet. Suicidal, Tom muttered. Perhaps, Phil said softly, but it could end this conflict and save billions of lives. When they returned to the assembly hall, the debate had grown even more heated. Lund was trying desperately to maintain order as accusations flew between the factions. This division weakens us at a time when unity is essential, Lund declared. We must reach consensus. From the gallery, Mark watched the chaos with growing frustration. While the Union argued philosophy, the harvesters were regrouping. Intelligence reports suggested they were massing a larger fleet, adapting to human tactics. The next attack would be worse. His communicator buzzed with a message from Admiral Blackwood. Assembly going nowhere. Harvesters gathering near Rigel. Need decision soon. Mark looked at Anna and Tom. We can't wait for them to agree. We need to act. The disruption device is our best chance, Anna said. But Jack's right. Deploying it would be a suicide mission. Tom's expression hardened. Then we volunteer. It's what we do. As they spoke, Elderfell approached their gallery, moving slowly but with determination. Behind him followed several younger Union members, including Kell. The assembly is paralyzed, Fell said without preamble. Half want to embrace your methods, half see them as abhorrent. Neither side will yield. We don't have time for philosophy, Mark replied. The harvesters are coming. Fell nodded. That is why some of us have made a decision outside the assembly's authority. He gestured to the small group behind him. We wish to join your defense efforts, to learn your ways of protection. Mark exchanged surprised glances with Anna and Tom. You understand what that means. We can't fight without violence. We understand, Kell said, stepping forward. We've seen the alternative. We choose to stand with the bloodthirsty ones. For the first time since arriving at the Union Assembly, Mark felt a genuine smile cross his face. Then let's go plan a proper welcome for the harvesters. Operation Bloodletting. The name had made the Union volunteers flinch when Admiral Blackwood first announced it, but now they wore it with a strange mix of pride and determination. Even Elderfeld had stopped objecting to the term. On the bridge of the EDF Nemesis, Admiral Blackwood stood before a holographic display of the Rigel system. Around her gathered the key players in the coming battle. Mark, Anna, Tom, Jack with his neural disruptor device, and the small contingent of Union members who had chosen to fight. The harvesters have gathered their largest fleet yet, Blackwood explained, pointing to red markers representing enemy vessels. 37 ships, including their command vessel, which we've codenamed Reaper. Jack stepped forward. The disruptor is ready, but as we discussed, it needs to be delivered directly to the Reaper's control center. Once activated, it will send a cascading failure through all connected harvester neural networks. How close? Mark asked. Ideally, inside the ship itself, Jack replied grimly. The room fell silent. What had seemed merely suicidal now seemed impossible. There's no way to get a ship that close, Tom said finally. Their defenses would destroy anything approaching. Blackwood's expression remained steady. That's why we're going to give them something they want too badly to destroy. She pressed a control, and the display shifted to show a new space station. This is Sanctuary 2. We've been building it in secret for the past week. From the outside, it appears to be a civilian refugee center, packed with thousands of potential meals. Anna's eyes widened. Bait. You're using a station as bait. An empty station, Blackwood corrected. Made to look inhabited. We'll position it at these coordinates and leak its location through channels the harvesters have compromised. They'll send collection ships rather than simply destroying it, Mark realized. They need living prey. Exactly. And when those ships dock with the empty station, Blackwood's eyes glinted. The station explodes, taking out their collection vessels. In the chaos, our strike team approaches the Reaper. Tom studied the plan. It could work. If they're focused on the station, a small, fast ship might slip through. I want to lead the strike team, Mark said immediately. Blackwood nodded, having expected this. Take the Hope. She's our fastest vessel now. Kell stepped forward, his voice nervous but determined. I request to join the strike team. The neural disruptor was partially my design, Jack added. I should go to ensure proper deployment. One by one, volunteers stepped forward, both human and Union. By the end, Mark had a team of 8. Himself, Tom, Jack, Kell, and 4 others. This is likely a one-way mission, Mark warned them all. The chances of getting back out are irrelevant, Kell interrupted. If we succeed, billions live. If we fail, billions die. The mathematics is simple, even for a non-warrior. Mark felt a surge of respect for the once timid communications officer. Well said. 2 days later, the trap was set. Sanctuary 2 floated in carefully selected coordinates, broadcasting false life signs and distress calls. The human fleet and their Union allies waited in position, hidden in the shadow of a nearby moon. On the Hope's bridge, Mark and his team prepared for launch. Each wore a modified combat suit, with the Union volunteers looking both uncomfortable and determined in the unfamiliar gear. Remember, Jack instructed, the disruptor needs to be placed in their central navigation chamber. It should look like a glowing column surrounded by harvested neural tissue. The thought made them all grimace. Harvester ships detected dropping out of faster-than-light travel, announced the Nemesis comm officer, voice tense. 37 vessels, approaching Sanctuary 2. They took the bait, Blackwood confirmed. All ships, maintain positions, wait for the collection vessels to dock. Minutes stretched into an eternity as they watched the harvester fleet approach the station. 3 smaller vessels detached from the main group, moving to dock with Sanctuary 2. Collection ships in position, reported the officer. Docking procedures commenced. Blackwood's voice was steel. Detonate. The flash temporarily blinded even the sensors as Sanctuary 2 exploded, taking the 3 harvester collection ships with it. Confusion rippled through the enemy fleet as planned. Now, Captain Roberts, Blackwood ordered. Launch while they're disoriented. The Hope shot forward from its hiding place, engines burning at maximum capacity as it streaked toward the heart of the harvester fleet, toward the massive command ship that held the key to ending this war. For Earth, Tom said quietly. For the Union, Kell added. Mark gripped the controls tighter, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest. For everyone. 6 months after Operation Bloodletting, the Grand Union Assembly Hall was filled once again. The atmosphere, however, was markedly different. Representatives from all 32 species sat in unusual silence as Admiral Lisa Blackwood stood at the center, her uniform displaying both Earth and Union insignia. The scars on her face were still fresh, testament to the battle that had changed everything. Behind her stood the survivors of the Hope's mission. Tom, his arm in a regeneration sleeve, and Kel, who had surprised everyone with his bravery during the final confrontation. "The Harvester threat has been neutralized," Blackwood announced, her voice carrying easily through the large chamber. "Their remaining vessels have retreated beyond the outer rim." The neural disruptor worked exactly as designed. First Speaker Lund nodded solemnly. "The Union owes humanity a debt we cannot repay. Captain Roberts and Engineer Wilson gave their lives to ensure our safety." Blackwood's jaw tightened at the mention of Mark and Jack, lost during the mission's final moments. They had successfully planted the disruptor, but never made it back to the extraction point. "They died as they lived," Blackwood said simply, "protecting others." Elder Thill, now recognized as the leader of the growing pragmatist faction, rose from his seat. "Which brings us to the matter at hand, the status of humanity within the Union." The traditional tension returned to the room. Despite humanity's sacrifice, many still viewed their methods with horror. The final battle had been brutal. The neural disruptor had caused the harvester ships to crash into each other, their crews experiencing what humans recognize as panic for the first time. The Union sensors had recorded everything, including the human celebration afterward. A mixture of mourning, relief, and fierce pride that had seemed barbaric to many watching. "Humans have demonstrated both their value and their danger," Lund began carefully. "Their violent tendencies saved us all," Thill interrupted. "What we call violent tendencies, they call protective instincts." Anna Frost stepped forward to stand beside Blackwood. Over the months of crisis, she had become the unofficial bridge between human and Union thinking. "If I may address the Assembly," she requested. Lund nodded permission. "The Union has misunderstood humanity from the beginning," Anna said. "You saw our capacity for violence and called us bloodthirsty. You saw our warships and called us primitive. What you failed to see was why we fight." She gestured to Tom and Kel. "Ask Kel what he learned fighting alongside humans. Ask him if we love violence." Kel stepped forward, nervously at first, then with growing confidence. "Humans don't love violence. They love what they protect through violence. They celebrated after battle, not because they enjoyed killing, but because they saved lives, even at the cost of their own." A murmur spread through the assembly. Blackwood watched the faces of the representatives, seeing confusion, skepticism, but also growing understanding in some. "The Union has survived for 12,000 years through peace," Lund acknowledged. "But we now know there are threats peace cannot address. Perhaps there is wisdom in maintaining some capacity for defense." "Earth offers this," Blackwood said. "We will protect the Union. Our ships will patrol your borders. Our soldiers will stand guard where needed. And in return," asked one of the more skeptical elders. "You teach us," Tom replied. "Your science, your medicine, your arts. The things that flourish when people don't have to worry about their safety. We'll handle the ugly work so you can continue your peaceful development." The debate lasted hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Too many had witnessed the harvester threat, and too many had been saved by human intervention. When the final vote came, it created a new category within the Union: protective species. Humanity would maintain its military, but use it only against external threats. As the assembly dispersed, Anna, Tom, and Blackwood stood with Thill and Kel on a quiet observation deck. Below them, a memorial service was beginning for those lost in the conflict, both human and Union. "They still don't fully understand us," Tom said, watching the solemn gathering. "They're beginning to," Thill replied. "Some of our younger members have started studying human history. They're particularly interested in your concepts of just war and necessary violence." A young Union diplomat approached hesitantly. "Admiral Blackwood, I've been assigned to study human military history. Could you teach me about courage?" Blackwood studied the young alien, seeing genuine curiosity where once there had been only fear or disdain. "I'll do better," she said. I'll introduce you to the families of those who gave everything to protect people they never met. You'll learn courage from them." The diplomat bowed. "We called you bloodthirsty," he admitted quietly. "But now we understand. When darkness came, you were the only ones who knew how to fight it." As stars shone above them, humans and aliens stood together in silence, honoring those who had stood against the darkness. The so-called bloodthirsty ones who had proven to be the galaxy's only heroes.